Cool. Looks like it's recording. Cool. Looks like it's
Excellent.
What's up?
Not too much, man. How are you?
Good. Keeping busy. It's a lot going on. Just tired. Lots of work. Lots of jobs. I was doing chalkboards today. So kind of to start over here, Joshua, I talked with you. I met you on Twitter. I think we started first talking on Twitter. And what is your role at Gray Fox Games, which is tabletop gaming? Like, what's your role there?
Yeah, so I'm the head of game development for Gray Fox Games.
Okay.
Recently updated to head of game development and acquisition. And what that means is that I'm the primary point of contact when people are trying to assign a game with us. So that's mostly the kind of work that I do at conventions. I meet with board game designers and see if I think that their game is a good fit for our brand, if we have an audience for them. And then I also take the games that we've signed and I help make them better. So from the time we sign an initial design, I work on making sure the game is well tested, well balanced, getting the art for it, and basically just getting everything set for publication. So it goes from being the kind of, notes on scraps of paper that you see from an early prototype to actually being a finished game.
Yeah, and I think we had made contact too, because I was talking about, I make board games kind of for fun. I've made a few, I think, for friends. I think when I visited South Africa, I made them a board game. It was just like a South African-themed board game for fun. And I played around with the idea of making more serious board games. And I think that started with the Game Crafter, because I had known about the Game Crafter for a while, but it was so expensive I didn't go that route. So I think I started talking to you about, how do people get into creating game boards? Like, how do designers and artists and these creative types who want to make a game, how do they get into it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I followed you on Twitter because I'm obviously a Survivor fan, and I saw you had posted a game board for something that you had done before, and I think we started a conversation around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people who want to design as a hobby will use the Game Crafter. You can put your files on the Game Crafter and have them be available for people to order. So if you just want to put something together and then promote it to friends or family, they can hop on there, order a copy. It's not much different than like putting a T-shirt or something on Redbubble or Cafe Press.
Right.
But if you want to get your game to reach a broader market, there are really two major ways that you can do it. One is that you can pitch it to a publisher, which is what I do in my role in Gray Fox Games, and then they can bring your game to the larger market and get it into stores and hobby shops and all that stuff. Or you can take it to Kickstarter, which lets you try and get a lot of the end users to jump on board before the project is made, and then use that to fund your project, deliver to the people that you got excited about it, and then hopefully make some extras that you can then promote on your own after the Kickstarter has delivered.
Right. And it's interesting to me. I was just looking up at the history of, a brief history. Usually when I don't know anything about a topic, I go to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is kind of like the Cliff Notes of everything. And just looking at Wikipedia, they said that even since like the mid-90s, board games have been having this resurgence in popular culture. And I'm looking at the chart and the graph, and it says since 2000, it's almost like doubled the amount of board games that exist, that are out there being actually published and played. Yeah. So this is different than video games. Like, you would think video games would obviously continue to grow in popularity, and board games would continue to decrease in popularity. So why, you're in this every day. Like, what's the deal? Like, why is there this growth?
Honestly, I think the sort of board game boom, you hear a term thrown around in the industry and the hobby right now, that we're in the golden age of board games. And I think that's true, and I think that video games have a lot to do with it. I think we're at the point where we have generations who have grown up with technology, playing video games, sitting around screens, that are finding that technology infiltrates your life so often that people relish the opportunity to sit down and have an analog experience, to sit at the table with other people and have a shared interactive experience. Games are a great kind of social lubricant, right? Because everybody gathers around an activity, and it takes a little bit of the pressure off kind of, a social situation like, well, I'm just going to go to the bar and talk to a stranger. There's a level of anxiety about that. If I'm going to go to a meetup where I know everybody's there to play a game, I'm going to socialize. I'm going to meet people and make friends. but I have this kind of underlying activity to guide me. So I don't know. I think technology is in a lot of ways responsible for the rise of board games because it's become so ubiquitous in our lives. It's not just technology is not just my entertainment; it's everything, and I want to kind of find my entertainment elsewhere.
Right. There definitely is a social element to tabletop games and board games, which I didn't really realize till I started playing them. I'm still very much an outsider. I play the only major board games I played in the past maybe like 2 years, like since playing Monopoly back when I was very little, in a cabin. You're in a cabin, so Monopoly is like the only thing to do. So that's what we would do, and that was like pre-internet, I think.
Your grandmother's dusty old copy that just happens to be up there.
Yeah, and it's missing like a bunch of the $500 bills, so we had to make our own. But the only major tabletop games I had played in maybe the last 2 years are I played Settlers of Catan because my brothers became obsessed with it. I played, we played regular old card games, so Euchre, Rummy. We have played Mancala. So Mancala, definitely an older, I think a very old game, tabletop game. And then Apples to Apples came around a little bit in college, which I think I graduated from Apples to Apples to Cards Against Humanity once I was at a couple Comic-Cons. People were playing Cards Against Humanity, and I learned about how funny and ridiculous that game was. Right. And then recently, I think Deception, which is one of your which is one of Gray Fox games. Yep. And then I think just yesterday we played Seven Wonders, which I never had heard of that game up until yesterday when I played it, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's interesting the games that you cite because a lot of those older games have inspired new games, right? Like Settlers of Catan, I bet that's on the Wikipedia page talking about the sort of board game resurgence, right? I think it was 1995 that it came out, and it's kind of regarded as this seminal moment that like Euro games came to America and kind of started the boom, right?
Right.
But Settlers of Catan is in a lot of ways an evolution of Monopoly, right? You roll your dice, you get your resources, you trade. It was new and familiar, right? You recognized. You mentioned Mancala, and Mancala has been ported into modern board games. Mancala is a game by itself, but now it is kind of the inspiration for mechanics in other games. So there's a game called Trajan, where the core mechanic is basically Mancala. Okay. But rather than using the game of Mancala as the game in itself, you take the kind of Mancala action of dropping stones to determine what things you can do on your turn.
Okay.
And so I don't know, board games, like video games, have this kind of tendency to feed on themselves, and people draw on the inspiration of games from the past to make something new, and you get something, more inspired.
Right. I went to a Comic-Con in Traverse City, and I didn't know anybody, and I played a Cards Against Humanity tournament, and by the end of it, I knew everybody. Like, there was this weird, like, how people play, and you get to laugh, and you get to, like, see how people react to certain things. And that's something beautiful about games, really.
Agreed. And I think the games that rise to popularity most quickly are the ones that put the social aspect first and foremost. I mean, Deception, like you mentioned, is one of our most popular titles, and it got that way because it's approachable, because there's a social aspect, because it's short. You're not getting people into a game of something like Risk or Axis and Allies, right? They're going to play for 15 to 30 minutes. They're going to laugh. They're going to learn something about each other, and those experiences help you bond with people really quickly, right? You have a shared experience. You laugh. You get to know each other, and you get to get in each other's heads. And so it's a great jumping off point to build a relationship, to have something in common that makes you laugh, that makes you play. And from that point, it seems much more natural to interact with people socially.
Yeah. It was funny you mentioned Risk, too, because Risk is one of those games that kind of kept me as an outsider. Because I remember playing Risk. We played Risk, I think, with my cross-country team in college. And it was so in-depth and so involved. I just checked out. I was like, I can't stay for this level of investment. It was almost too hardcore, and it was too much.
There's a time commitment there that if it's longer than a feature-length film, you're going to minimize the audience who's willing to commit.
Right. I was done. I was checked out. So I think that that's come around. I think there are definitely more games where, like, kind of like Deception, what you're saying, where you have it onboards people that want to play, or they want to dip their toe in the water and try tabletop games, like
Sure.
modern tabletop games, but they're not like they don't want to get the full like risk experience. Um, Dungeons and Dragons is another one, and I talked to Stephen Fishbach about this. Like,
I
I'm
watched that episode.
I'm intimidated by Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I've been looking at meetups around my town, and I'm like, it's still too intense. Like, I almost need someone to like handhold because it's so involved.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Role playing games are kind of a world apart.
Okay.
I've played role playing games. I played some in high school, some in college. Now I play from time to time, but usually one offs, not campaigns.
Okay.
But those games they're not. For me, I don't find them sort of newbie approachable or even like stranger approachable. Like, in order to get real enjoyment out of a role playing game, you want to kind of let the rules be secondary and
Okay.
have the experience be about kind of the play acting, the role playing aspect. And obviously, I'm much less comfortable doing that in a group of strangers than with a group of friends.
Right.
If I'm going to go play Dungeons and Dragons with strangers, I feel like I have to know all the mechanics because I don't want to be the guy who's holding everybody back.
That
And
too.
and I would never be comfortable for me. But getting in a session with friends and playing something like 10 Candles, which is kind of this D&D role-playing thing that's meant to be single session and plays in an hour,
Okay.
that is more approachable. And, it lets the aspect of, kind of group make-believe come to the forefront, and all the knowing how to measure my stats and what skill checks to make and what dice to roll become very secondary.
Okay.
People tell me that they don't like board games. My reaction is, well, I don't think you found the right game for you yet, because I think it's such a diverse medium at this point. And saying that you don't like board games is akin to saying you don't like movies or you don't like television. Like, that isn't true. You might not like, procedural dramas. You might not like horror films. But there's going to be a genre of film or TV out there for you, and there's going to be a board game out there for you if it's something that you're inclined to seek out. And that isn't to say everybody has to. Maybe board gaming is just not something you have any interest in. But if you have any interest, you can find something that is the right fit for the amount of complexity you want, the kind of enjoyment you want. I don't know. There's so much out there that it's hard to genuinely say there isn't something in that world that would bring you joy.
Right. Right. And don't like judge the genre. Don't judge the medium for like some of the pieces or some of the things that you've seen of it. Like, you can't judge all board games by Monopoly.
Right.
If you don't like that experience, or if you do like that experience, I guess. From an art standpoint, if somebody out there is an artist or someone out there is a creator, how would they go about entering this world? Like, if they really are like serious and they're like, you know what, I want to make games, I want to create art for games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do they go it alone? Do they start to collaborate? Like, what are some good ideas in terms of starting points?
I mean, most of the board game artists I know or work with work freelance. There are people who do their own art and sell their artistic skills to a variety of mediums, not just board games.
Okay.
But as big as board games have gotten in the past, 10, 15 years, we're still tiny compared to something like the video game industry or certainly television or film. So a lot of the people who become up-and-comers in this industry do it in a very sort of boots-on-the-ground, grassroots sort of way. You go to conventions, you give your cards out to people, you meet publishers, and people get to know you. You network, and that's how you get gigs. The way that we find a lot of the art for games that we use is through ArtStation. So if you maintain a portfolio and keep it on ArtStation, that's something that I know lots of publishers look at when they're looking for titles. But I mean, the best thing that you can do is just to promote your art specifically to people in the industry or in the hobby. Go to conventions, bring a portfolio, give them a card, link them to your website, and be like, hey, I'm into art, I'm into board games, here's the style of work I do, and let me know if you think there's a project I could work on.
Okay. Yeah, because there's a lot of 2D artists that I see, at least. Like, I just started an Instagram, I think, last summer, and I'm just blown away at the amount. There's incredible illustrators and 2D artists out there, and it kind of seems like they're in all genres. And to me, like, I could see them, working on production art for a movie just as easily as I could see them making like cards for a board game or panels for a storyboard and those types of things. So it's all
those guys. They'll make a lot more money making art for movies.
yeah. See, that's the other thing too is like the gaming world. I have seen some really great art, but at the same time, it kind of reminds me of comics in a way, or indie comics at least, where there's these really talented, really great artists, but they're almost underappreciated because. And I don't know if it's because the genre is like looked down on, because I know indie comic books have been looked down on for years as not serious art, or not like in this weird realm of not fine art and not Marvel or this marketed entertainment art. So, and I don't know if that's in gaming at all, in tabletop gaming.
I mean, maybe it is, but it's hard to answer that as somebody kind of in the industry. Obviously, I have great appreciation for the people who do work for this industry and for this hobby. If the perception from outside is different, I think that's a shame, but it also wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's that sort of mentality has been going on since time immemorial. But whatever thing is kind of the pop culture thing is not the fine art thing. Maybe in 100 years we will regard it differently, but it's just like the way that genre fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi are never been kind of part of the canon, but that's beginning to change, right? So I think that's true for comics and board games as well. I also think there's people working in this hobby and industry that have built quite a name for themselves doing just this. Artists like Vincent Dutrait and Kwanchai Moria and Beth Sobel are people who are known in the board game community and out of the board game community for doing really great work. And if you follow them on Instagram or Twitter, you can see the great stuff that they're putting out.
I think one of my favorite aspects of board games is diplomacy. Anything having to do with like, person-to-person exchanges or the opportunity for betrayal. And I don't know if this is just like it because I like Survivor or I like my personality type likes to debate things with people or discuss things. But any aspect of diplomacy or like human interaction that involves, transaction of resources, transaction of information is super fascinating to me. So what are some games that you can kind of recommend to me to like check out?
I can recommend lots of stuff.
Okay.
And, you and I come to, I think, sort of the same thing from different angles, right? As a Survivor player, you look at board games and say, hey, I see some board games that do this thing, and that seems really cool. I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
And for me, as somebody who grew up with board games, I approached Survivor the same way. When Survivor became a phenomenon, I was like, that's the thing that I like about board games, made flesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Werewolf, Ultimate Werewolf, or Mafia, which some people know it as, is kind of the quintessential game of social politics. And there's a million more. Diplomacy is one of them. So if you've played Diplomacy and you still have friends, congratulations. But yeah, I mean, that is a game that hinders on the stabbing of somebody in the back, and it can get pretty brutal and pretty ruthless. I mean, imagine Risk without any luck involved, right? There's no rolling of the dice to see who wins the battle. You just submit your orders and see who screwed over who, and if you're still friends at the end of the day. That's not for the sort of casual player, right? Because that's a game that will take all day, like a game of Risk will, and certainly people will genuinely get their feelings hurt in that game. Werewolf is faster, and so you can have that. You can even condense that into a shorter time period with games like One Night Werewolf or The Resistance, which are social deduction games. Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, I think, is one of those titles as well that has people working with sort of a communal state at cross purposes, so you don't know who to trust.
Right. Okay. And I think the reason I like these diplomacy type games is it kind of reflects something about humans when you play it, or like at least your friends, at least the people that you're with. So I really like that aspect of them. Like every game of chance I've seen, I feel like is a kid's game. Like I cannot stand a game of chance. At the end of it, I'm just like, there was no skill involved. And I know that some games do have quite a bit of chance involved, but there's still enjoyable elements of skill.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I think that spectrum isn't absolute, right? People want to be able to choose the level of commitment and skill required. If a game like chess is all about your sort of skill and knowledge, and a game like Uno is all about the cards that you draw, most people are going to find enjoyment somewhere in the middle, right? A lot of people don't want to have to be scholars in whatever they're playing in order to do well, but they want to feel like their decisions have impact, and that the choices they made mattered. And
right.
That's how you get sort of satisfying feedback out of a game. You let players make choices that affect the outcome, but throw in enough element of chaos that the player who's played the most is not necessarily going to win every game, because where's the fun in that?
And that kind of sounds like what your role is, as when you meet like somebody who's designing a new game, maybe you play test it, or you kind of assess it, and then you realize like we need maybe a little bit more chance would make this more fun, maybe a little bit more strategy would help in this area.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, my primary role as a game developer is really to be a game breaker. When somebody gives me a game that they've been playing, for however many years they've been working on it with the group of people that they've been working on, my goal is to take it and play the game as, functionally as badly as possible, to behave the way that a player wouldn't behave, and see if I can tear these systems apart. And if I can't, then the game is well put together. And if I can, we find where the weaknesses are and we fix them.
Okay.
And some of that is about finding where the element of luck versus strategy is. Some of it is really kind of this quintessential math to see if every action you take has sort of relative value, that players are not going to play the game 5 times and identify, well, if I just do this thing all the time, that will always be the course to victory. I mean, we try to break them and hope that we fail.
Yeah, it's so when I was growing up, both my older brother and my younger brother were huge video game fanatics. They played all kinds of video games, and I didn't play video games as much just to like beat them and get good at them. I played them to like explore them and enjoy the artwork and like see how far the boundary of the world goes, especially if it's an open world. I try to fall off the map, so I can totally relate to like, let's try and break the system. I think I did it just more as like a curiosity to like see how far it would go, but that kind of sounds like what you were doing with board games.
I did both of those things with video games growing up. There were things like games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter where I wanted to be the best and be able to beat the people that I played with. But I played EverQuest for some period of time, and I remember I canceled my subscription, and the day before it ended, I thought, well, I'm just going to see how far I can run my character out into the wilderness, right?
Yeah.
And what a fascinating thing it was to just go out and explore the world. I mean, there's an interesting article somewhere about the 8 types of fun. A friend of mine who teaches board game design to middle schoolers has linked me to this. Her name is Kathleen Mercury, and you can follow her on Twitter as well if you're interested in kind of the teaching of board games. But there are all these different aspects that people get enjoyment out of that, game designers, video game and sort of analog game designers consider about, the explorer versus the competitor, people who want to continually improve their skill versus people who just want to see what happens if they try this, people who are more interested in outcomes, people that are more interested in the story. And I hopefully, as I continue to build a catalog for Gray Fox Games and now a spin-off publisher that I'm doing on my own, I can find titles that resonate with everybody.
I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this, because I don't really, like I said, I played some board games, but I don't know the depth of it like you do. And it sounds like I just need to, it sounds like even if I went to a convention, like one of these board game conventions, I would already know a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, the conventions are, as the experience of going to convention can be as varied as the experience of playing board games, depending on which convention that you go to. There are some that are built very much around buying and selling new titles. There are some that are built around demoing and going out and just playing kind of as many games as you can. There are some that are designed just for players that have very few vendors in them. You kind of go and there's a library, and it's all about the social experience of meeting people and playing games. Okay. So if you're interested in playing new stuff and meeting publishers and having them show you what's hot for them this year, Gen Con is a great show to go to. If you're more interested in just kind of meeting other people in the hobby space and playing their games and kind of checking stuff out from a library for kind of a freeform day or weekend of game playing, then BoardGameGeek.con or the Dice Tower Convention are both good shows for that.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Good talking to you.
All right, have a good rest of your weekend.
You too, man. I'll send you some notes. See you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm writing down their names, but I don't think I know how to spell those, so I will.
Well, I'll send it to you after the show.
Yeah, you type it through the
show notes.
You type it through the chat because you just said those names, and I'm like, those are important people, but I don't know how to spell those names.